The Clampetts' concern for the British Queen begins from the same uncomplicated generosity that has shaped so many of their decisions about wealth. When they hear exaggerated reports suggesting that the Queen is experiencing financial difficulties, they do not respond with the skepticism or calculation that might be expected from people possessing an enormous fortune. Instead, they immediately think about how they can help. Their reaction is both sincere and comic because the family treats an international royal crisis almost as though it were a neighbor in need. Jed's practical kindness gives the situation its emotional foundation, while the sheer scale of the proposed assistance makes Mr. Drysdale increasingly uneasy. For Mr. Drysdale, the possibility that the Clampetts might send a substantial portion of their fortune overseas is almost unbearable. His professional imagination immediately begins calculating the consequences, while the family thinks primarily about generosity and responsibility. Raymond Bailey can heighten the humor by allowing Drysdale's concern to appear simultaneously professional and deeply personal. The banker knows the magnitude of the money involved, but the Clampetts do not experience their fortune in the same abstract way. To them, money is a resource that can be used to help someone who appears to need it. That difference in perspective drives the comic tension surrounding the royal situation. The story becomes especially funny when the Clampetts' simple desire to help collides with Drysdale's understanding of diplomacy, banking, and international reputation. Drysdale recognizes that any connection between his wealthy clients and the British royal family could become enormously complicated, yet the family approaches the matter with complete innocence. Their willingness to trust the information they have heard demonstrates one of their defining qualities. They tend to respond to apparent need before considering the sophisticated structure surrounding it. Judd's calm generosity therefore becomes a source of both warmth and anxiety, because Drysdale understands that even the kindest flamboyant decision can have consequences far beyond the family's immediate intentions. The involvement of a supposed representative of the Queen gives the situation its next comic turn because the Clampetts are willing to consider an international financial arrangement without the elaborate suspicion that would normally surround such a transaction. Their wealth has made them powerful enough to participate in extraordinary affairs, but their emotional instincts remain remarkably straightforward. They're impressed by the idea of helping the royal family, yet their interest is rooted in goodwill rather than prestige. The supposed representative therefore enters a household where trust is unusually easy to obtain, creating a perfect environment for misunderstandings involving documents, authority, money, and the extraordinary promises surrounding royal property. Mr. Drysdale's attempts to manage the situation reveal just how difficult it is for him to balance the Clampetts' innocence with the conventions of international finance. He understands the names connected to royalty carry enormous symbolic and financial weight, and he therefore approaches every new claim with professional concern. Yet the family's enthusiasm continually pushes the situation beyond anything he can comfortably control. His efforts to provide diplomacy and financial guidance become increasingly complicated because the Clampetts do not necessarily share his assumptions about what constitutes a serious international transaction. The comedy comes from watching Drysdale apply sophisticated reasoning to circumstances that are becoming more absurd with every conversation. Miss Jane Hathaway once again becomes essential as the person most capable of recognizing the gap between Drysdale's frantic professional response and the Clampetts' innocent intentions. Nancy Culp's controlled performance can make Jane's reactions function as a quiet commentary on the entire spectacle. She understands the seriousness of financial dealings, yet she is also familiar enough with the Clampetts to know that their generosity is genuine. Her challenge is therefore not simply to prevent a mistake, but to help Drysdale navigate a situation in which his own desperation may make him react almost as irrationally as the people he believes he must protect. The supposed royal real estate opportunity adds another layer of satire because the Clampetts' extraordinary wealth makes even the purchase of an enormous territory seem imaginable. Their willingness to consider such a proposal reflects the peculiar relationship they have developed with money. They possess so much of it that ordinary financial limitations no longer shape their thinking, yet they remain inexperienced with the sophisticated mechanisms through which enormous transactions are supposed to be evaluated. The comedy comes from this contradiction. The Clampetts can afford extraordinary things, but affordability is not the same as understanding. Their generosity gives them good intentions, while their lack of suspicion leaves them vulnerable to an increasingly elaborate scheme. The idea of purchasing Canada transforms the financial misunderstanding into one of the script's most extravagant comic premises. The scale of the proposed transaction is so enormous that it becomes a natural extension of the Clampetts' ability to become involved in situations far beyond ordinary experience. Jethro's presence makes the absurdity even more entertaining because his confidence allows him to treat an international matter with the same straightforward enthusiasm he brings to other schemes. The family does not necessarily perceive the ridiculous gap between their ordinary rural logic and the extraordinary political and geographical implications of what they are discussing. That innocence becomes the engine of the comedy. The royal property. Scheme also allows the series to satirize the relationship between wealth and prestige. The Clampetts are surrounded by people who understand that royal connections can create enormous social importance, yet the family itself remains more interested in helping than in gaining status. Their willingness to become involved in the supposed purchase therefore exposes the absurdity of treating international prestige as something that can simply be acquired through money. Drysdale's anxiety intensifies because he recognizes how extraordinary the proposal sounds, while the Clampetts remain focused on whether the arrangement might genuinely solve the problem they believe the Queen is facing. The royal financial crisis reaches its most revealing comic stage as generosity, misplaced trust, professional anxiety, and extraordinary wealth collide around the supposed transaction. Jed and the family continue approaching the situation with good intentions, while Drysdale struggles to prevent their fortune from becoming entangled in an increasingly implausible international arrangement. The comedy works because the Clampetts are not motivated by greed or vanity. They are trying to help, and that sincerity makes the scale of the misunderstanding even more delightful. With this supposed representative, royal documents, and real estate proposal now deeply entangled with the family's enormous fortune, the situation is poised for its most outrageous financial revelation.